Hi everybody, I'm Raha, user researcher at Spotify, and I'm going to start off this presentation with a famous quote by Winston Churchill. To improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. What this quote doesn't encompass is that dealing with change isn't always pleasant, especially if you didn't want change in the first place. Things are no different with digital products. Enforcing change into products that are incorporated into people's everyday lives will, unsurprisingly, often cause frustration for users. Change aversion is simply a natural phenomenon, and disrupting habits can be even linked to perceived losses. But sometimes change is needed to enable a feature to grow and provide more value to the user. We found ourselves in one of these scenarios at Spotify not long ago. The Spotify library is a meaningful space that users describe as theirs. In studies, we've even heard them say it represents them better than their wardrobe. But in order to make the library work for the future, it had to be more scalable. It had to be changed. We user researchers and data scientists embrace this change with one clear goal in mind: to frustrate our millions of users as little as possible, essentially minimizing change aversion. Today, we're here to tell our story. Our approach to minimizing change aversion can be summarized in these 3 points: early and close involvement of data science and user researchers in the product development cycle, applying mixed method studies, and evaluation at scale in controlled environments. To elaborate, before jumping into evaluation mode, we needed to understand users' mental models of the library and boundaries of the experience. We also needed to learn this as early as possible, as it set the foundation for changes to come. So we needed to be involved early in the product cycle. We also needed to understand both the scale of specific behaviors and why they occur, which meant we needed mixed method research. Finally, we needed to evaluate large changes in a controlled environment before we would scale, and to do this iteratively for stepwise learning. And through this approach, we wanted to keep negative sentiment low and avoid negative impact to guardrail metrics. So what does this mean in practice? We'll highlight a few examples related to each point. Starting with early involvement, one example of early involvement in a user research study we conducted in the beginning of the project. We went into the field to understand users' experiences and mental models ascribed to the library. We visited 18 users' homes in the US and observed different attitudes and behaviors in regards to library organization. Similar to how different and personal one's wardrobe is organized, we've observed very different attitudes and behaviors in relation to Spotify's library organization. Some were keeping their collections in strict order, some were gathering large amounts of content to revisit later, and others were in between. However, the foundational mental model of the library as their space in a world of recommendations was consistent. The playlists they create and store can hold a lot of pride, identity, and nostalgic value to users. This learning emphasized the importance of including users' own library content in the process of evaluating new solutions, which led us to using personal prototypes where users could see and react to their own content in the new library. As we continued to work closely with our design and product peers, we were able to identify key hypotheses that needed to be addressed early and put them to test through rounds of concept testing. Moving on to applying mixed method studies, with this approach we were able to keep track of both what users were doing and why. Knowing both what and why helped us gain a deeper understanding of the problem space, plan accordingly, and prioritize risks with higher confidence. For example, by combining an A/B test with a diary study, we were able to understand nuances in users' behaviors and attitudes towards organization. We discovered that while organization was a core user need, users didn't expect to do the manual work and wanted our help. Finally, let's talk about evaluation at scale in controlled environments. When we came to new designs for the library where we were fairly confident in based on previous research activities, we decided to start evaluating at scale. Evaluating at scale comes with higher risk and lower ability to capture detailed nuance, but it enables us to learn from a wider group of users and rank the prevalence of different observed phenomena more reliably. We started an opt-in beta test where a small percentage of users had the opportunity to try the new experience and provide feedback in the form of text and ratings. This really allowed us to track user behavior and gather a large amount of text feedback from users who experienced a new library over an extended period of time in a real-life setting with their own collections. From the beta test, we learned about the most important issues at scale, and we use this information to iterate on the design to then further evaluate via a multi-step A/B testing process. These A/B tests were the largest scale research activities and guided us in making the decision of what to finally roll out to users. So, to recap, we wanted to minimize change aversion, and our approach was to get involved in the product cycle early and work closely with our design and product peers to gain understanding and align on the fundamental user needs and success metrics. Combine qualitative and quantitative research to gain deeper understanding of both what and why. Evaluate concepts at scale through beta testing and A/B tests to make iterative improvements. And as a result, we were able to keep our plans fairly stable and come to a solution that had lower negative sentiment from users compared to previous redesign. We managed to have no negative impact on guardrail metrics and have significant positive impact on success metrics. If our approach doesn't seem revolutionary, we agree. Although this feels like a natural approach, in reality, this way of working isn't always possible in industry. And while the project was largely seen as a success, it wasn't perfect. There are several things we would do differently if we were to do it all again. For example, we would have been more directional in our beta feedback questions. Finally, we want to acknowledge that this approach takes a lot of time and effort, and although we felt it was time and effort well spent for this project, as it was great high-risk change in a personal space, we wouldn't recommend this for lower risk or smaller changes. That's it for us. We're curious to hear your thoughts and questions. Thank you.